All right, so, whether you're already kicking back or still working toward it, retirement is something we all think about.
It really is.
And today we're going deep on retirement spending.
Okay.
We're looking at where that money actually goes when you finally reach those golden years.
Sounds good.
We got this article titled, "The Average Retiree Spends $4,345 on monthly expenses and burns 75% of that on these four things."
Hmm. Interesting.
How does your own spending compare? That's what it asks. So we'll break it all down, those four big spending categories for retirees.
Okay.
And we'll even sprinkle in some actionable tips,
Right.
so you can get a head start on planning, no matter how far off retirement might seem.
Yeah, it's fascinating how we always talk about saving for retirement, but rarely dive into the actual spending once we're there.
Right. It's like we assume the spending part will just figure itself out.
Yeah.
But the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they paint a pretty clear picture. The average retiree over 65 earns around $55,335 a year
Okay.
and spends almost all of it.
Mm-hmm.
About $52,141. That's a pretty thin margin, isn't it?
It is.
And the average savings for those in the 65-69 age bracket is only around $200,000.
Okay.
Really highlights the need for some smart planning because that nest egg has to last for potentially decades.
Exactly. And, it also explains why so many people continue to work in retirement.
Oh, for sure.
Those savings might seem like a lot,
Yeah.
but when you spread it out over years of living expenses, you realize why careful budgeting is so important.
Absolutely. Okay, let's break down these four spending giants.
Okay.
Starting with the one that's always top of mind,
All right.
housing. The article says it eats up 36% of a retiree's budget.
Wow.
With the housing market being what it is, I'm not totally shocked, but
Yeah,
that's a big chunk.
it is. And, while the current market definitely plays a role, housing in general has always been a big expense for retirees.
For sure.
And you might think downsizing is the obvious answer, but it can be tough emotionally, and it's not always feasible.
Yeah.
There are some other more innovative solutions out there, though.
Like what?
Well, relocating to a more affordable area can be a game changer.
Okay.
And we're even seeing a rise in co-living situations designed just for retirees.
Interesting.
It's all about thinking outside the box.
Co-living for retirees.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of like dorm life, but with better snacks and less all-night study sessions.
Right.
And it could really help with those costs, especially if you don't need a ton of space.
Yeah.
But let's say you love your current house and moving's not an option. The article reminds us to at least shop around for home insurance.
Oh, yeah.
Snag the best deal possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to the second biggest expense. Transportation.
Yeah.
It takes up about 13% of a retiree's budget,
Mm-hmm.
averaging around $7,160 annually.
So maybe time to trade in the car for a fancy electric bike and a bus pass?
Yeah.
Embrace that retirement freedom, right?
Huh.
Okay, jokes aside, ditching a car or even just a second car if you have one could save a bundle. Think of all the gas insurance maintenance. It adds up.
It really does. And speaking of insurance, just like with your home, it's smart to shop around for car insurance.
Yeah,
Make sure you're getting the best rates.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, on to something we can all relate to. Food. It takes up about 12% of annual expenses for retirees.
Okay.
Averages out to about $6,490.
Hmm.
I mean, we got to keep ourselves fueled. But those grocery bills can be sneaky, especially if you're prone to impulse buys like me.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is where meal planning comes in.
Oh, yeah.
By planning your meals, you're not only eating healthier,
Right.
but you're also avoiding those pricey takeout temptations when you don't feel like cooking.
Oh, tell me about it. I don't feel like cooking. Let's just order in. Famous last words. Cost me a fortune over the years.
Yeah.
The article also had some good tips for grocery shopping. Go with a list shop on a full stomach so you're not tempted by everything.
Yeah.
And, hit those sales like a pro.
All great points.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought it was interesting what they said about comparing those fancy markets to regular supermarkets.
Oh, yeah.
You can often find the same quality, especially for produce, for way less if you skip the fancy ambiance.
It's like they say, champagne taste on a beer budget can really catch up to you.
Exactly.
All right, now for the topic that probably makes everyone cringe a little, healthcare.
Yeah.
Not surprisingly, it takes a big bite, too. Another 13% of annual spending, averaging $7,030 for retirees.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
Healthcare is a fact of life, and those costs can be scary,
Yeah.
especially as we get older. But the key here is to be proactive.
Okay.
Staying current on preventative screenings and vaccinations can actually save you money in the long run by catching things early.
It's like that saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Makes total sense when you think about the potential costs of treating something serious later on.
Exactly. And another crucial piece of the healthcare puzzle is having a dedicated emergency fund. Setting aside money in a high-yield savings account can give you a cushion for those unexpected medical expenses.
Okay, I have to ask high-yield savings accounts. How much of a difference do they really make?
If they sound fancy.
They do.
But are they worth it? Let's put it this way. A high-yield savings account could earn you over 4% interest,
Okay.
while a standard savings account at a bank like U.S. Bank might only offer 0.01% APY. That's a huge difference in potential earnings.
Whoa, okay. I'm definitely paying attention now. It's amazing how those small percentages can add up over time. It's interesting this article focuses on retirement spending,
Yeah.
but I'm realizing these insights are valuable for anyone, no matter where they are on their financial journey.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
Understanding these spending categories and using these tips we've talked about
right.
can help anyone take control of their finances, whether they're just starting out or nearing retirement.
Absolutely. Being mindful of housing costs, transportation expenses, food spending, and the potential impact of healthcare
Yeah.
can make a huge difference in your overall financial well-being, no matter your age.
I think what's interesting is how these categories are often connected.
Oh, how so?
Well, for example, choosing to live in a walkable neighborhood with good public transportation could reduce both your housing and transportation costs.
That's a great point. It's all about thinking strategically and finding solutions that fit your lifestyle and goals.
Exactly. And remember, even small changes can have a big impact over time.
Yeah.
Something as simple as swapping a few restaurant meals each month for home-cooked dinners can lead to big savings.
One thing that really stood out to me in the article was how much they emphasized shopping around for better deals, whether it's home insurance, car insurance, or even groceries.
Yeah,
It's easy to just stick with what you know, but taking the time to compare prices can really pay off.
it really can. And with so many online resources available these days, it's easier than ever to do your research and find those good deals.
Right. We've got a ton of information at our fingertips.
We-
I'm also curious about this idea of downsizing in retirement.
Okay.
It seems logical, especially if your kids have moved out and you're in a big empty house.
Yeah.
But I imagine it can be a tough emotional decision for some people.
You've touched on a really important aspect of retirement planning that often gets overlooked.
What's that?
The emotional side. Downsizing, relocating, or even just changing your spending habits
Right.
can mean letting go of things that hold sentimental value.
That's so true. It's not just about the numbers. It's about adjusting to a new chapter and finding a balance between financial security and, personal fulfillment.
Exactly. And that's where open communication and thoughtful planning come in.
Yeah.
Talking to your partner, family, or even a financial advisor can help you make those transitions and make choices that align with your values.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Okay, before we move on, I have a question for you.
Okay.
And for everyone listening out there.
All right.
If you were to retire today, how would your spending compare to these averages we've been talking about? Would you need to make any adjustments to your lifestyle or budget?
It's a good question.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about as we continue this deep dive.
For sure. It really makes you think, huh?
Mm,
And, it's not just about the numbers.
right,
It's about what really matters to you in retirement.
exactly. Because it's not just about getting by, it's about enjoying it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we talked about those 4 big spending categories, but this article really digs into those top 2, housing and transportation,
Yeah.
how they can impact your retirement budget. It even throws out some surprising stats.
Like what?
Do you know that almost 60% of retirees end up staying in their current homes,
Wow.
while only about 12% actually downsize?
Interesting. That seems counterintuitive,
It does.
but there are a few reasons why. For some, it's that emotional attachment to their home and community.
Yeah, I get that.
For others, it's about maintaining a certain lifestyle or having space for family to visit.
Okay, that makes sense. It's not just about the money, but also those personal connections and priorities. But for those who are open to it, the article says relocating to a cheaper area can be a big deal.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just about lower housing costs.
Right.
Relocating can also mean a more active lifestyle, better access to health care, or even just a change of scenery.
I can see the appeal. Trading in your snout shovel for a beach umbrella. That's the dream, right?
Exactly.
But what about that co-living trend we talked about earlier? That seems pretty radical for retirees.
It might seem unconventional, But these co-living communities designed for older adults are becoming more and more popular.
Really?
Yeah, they offer a unique mix of affordability, social connection, and support services,
Hmm.
which can be really appealing for retirees who are looking to downsize, avoid being isolated, or just simplify things.
So it's not just about splitting the rent, it's about building a sense of community and belonging.
Yeah, which can be especially important in retirement.
For sure. And let's not forget the potential savings.
Right.
By sharing those living expenses, retirees can free up a big chunk of their budget.
Yeah,
Maybe travel more, pursue hobbies, or just have more peace of mind.
exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see the upside. It's like a built-in support system and social network, all while saving money. That's pretty cool. But let's switch gears to transportation.
Right.
The article points out that a whopping 95% of retirees own a car.
It's true. And while having a car offers convenience and independence, it also comes with a lot of costs.
Oh, yeah.
Insurance, gas maintenance, and those potential repairs could really add up,
Oh, tell me about it.
especially if you're on a fixed income.
Yeah, my car seems to know exactly when I'm low on funds. It's like it has a sixth sense for throwing expensive repairs my way.
Huh, I know the feeling.
But the article highlights the potential savings of downsizing to one car or even going car-free.
Absolutely. Public transportation, ride-sharing services, even just walking or biking can be good alternatives,
True.
depending on where you live and your lifestyle.
Right. And with more electric bikes and scooters around, getting around is becoming even easier and more eco-friendly.
Yeah,
I love that. Imagine cruising around town on your electric scooter, feeling the breeze in your hair. Retirement goals right there.
definitely.
But I guess it all comes down to what you prefer and what works best for your needs.
Exactly. The key is to be aware of those transportation costs and look at all your options.
Right.
You might be surprised at the alternatives and how much you can save by making a few changes.
For sure. And hey, the article reminds us to shop around for insurance too.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Whether you have one car or two, don't just settle for your current policy. Look around and see if you can save some money.
It's worth it.
Solid advice. It's easy to get complacent, but a little effort can go a long way. Okay, now on to something near and dear to my heart. Food.
Right.
I mean, we've got to eat. But the article makes a good point that food spending can get out of control,
It can.
especially in retirement when you might have more time to eat out or splurge on fancy groceries.
You're right. Retirement can definitely bring lifestyle changes that affect our spending.
For sure.
We might have more time to socialize, which often means eating out more.
Yeah.
And let's not forget about those travel opportunities, trying new foods and
Oh,
all.
absolutely. I'm already dreaming of those Parisian pastries and Italian pasta dishes.
Uh-huh. Sounds delicious.
But the article reminds us that even something as simple as meal planning can make a big difference in keeping those food costs down.
Meal planning is so helpful. Not only does it help you control spending,
Right.
but it also encourages healthier eating.
True.
By planning ahead, you're less likely to give in to those impulse buys or rely on expensive takeout.
It's like having a roadmap for your taste buds.
Exactly.
You know what you're having? You can shop smart and you avoid ending up with a fridge full of wilted veggies and who knows what leftovers.
Wait.
But the article gets even more specific. It talks about tactics for smart grocery shopping.
Oh, like what?
Sticking to a list, shopping on a full stomach so you don't buy everything in sight, and taking advantage of sales. Those are all great tips.
They are. And I really liked what they said about comparing prices between those fancy markets and regular supermarkets.
Me too.
Often you can find the same quality, especially for produce, at a much lower price if you skip the fancy atmosphere.
So true. I'll admit I've definitely been seduced by those gourmet grocery stores with their perfect displays and exotic ingredients. But sometimes a simple head of lettuce from the regular supermarket does the job just as well.
It does.
And my wallet's happy. Okay, let's talk about the big one, healthcare.
All right.
We all know it's a major expense, especially as we get older. But the article really lays it all out, and it's eye-opening.
Healthcare is a big one. It's unavoidable, but the article points out that we have more control over those costs than we might think.
Okay, how do we do that? Spill the beans.
Well, first of all, it's about being proactive with our health. Staying up to date on screenings and vaccinations can catch potential problems early,
Okay.
and that could prevent more serious and costly issues down the line.
Like investing in your future well-being, both physically and financially.
Exactly. And along with preventative care, it's important to have a plan for unexpected medical costs.
Right. That's where that emergency fund comes in handy.
Exactly. Building a good emergency fund specifically for healthcare can give you peace of mind.
Yeah.
And it can keep those surprise medical bills from messing up your financial stability. And remember those high-yield savings accounts. That's a good place for those funds to grow while still being easy to access when you need them.
Okay, that makes sense. But how much should we aim for in our emergency fund, realistically?
That's a great question. Experts usually recommend having 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up.
Okay.
But in retirement, it's probably better to have a bit more saved, especially if you expect higher healthcare costs.
So maybe closer to 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, that's a good starting point. You can always adjust it based on your situation and how much risk you're comfortable with.
Right.
The main thing is to have a plan and be ready for those unexpected things that life throws at us.
True. And speaking of unexpected things, the article also talks about long-term care insurance
Oh, yeah?
as a way to handle potential costs of assisted living or in-home care later on.
It's not something people like to think about,
It's not.
but it's definitely worth considering as part of your retirement plan.
Absolutely. Long-term care insurance can be a good safety net,
It can.
especially if you have a family history of health issues or might need extra care as you age.
Right.
It's complicated, but it's worth looking into and talking about with your family and financial advisors.
I agree. I think one of the biggest takeaways from all of this is that knowledge is power.
Yeah.
The more we know about potential costs and how to manage them, the better decisions we can make.
For sure.
For our financial well-being, both in retirement and throughout life, it's not about denying ourselves. It's about making smart choices
Exactly.
that align with our values and goals.
I couldn't agree more. Financial literacy is key no matter how old you are or how much you make.
It is.
By understanding these things and planning ahead, we can live more fulfilling and financially secure lives.
Well said. And I think this deep dive has given our listeners a lot to think about.
I hope so.
We've looked at those 4 major spending categories in retirement.
Uncovered some surprising stats and talked about practical ways to manage those expenses.
Right.
But what I find really cool is that these insights apply to everyone.
They do.
No matter your age or financial situation, it's about knowing where your money goes and making choices that support your overall well-being.
Absolutely. Financial planning isn't just about numbers. It's about creating a life that reflects what you value.
Right, and I think that's something everyone can relate to.
It is.
Okay, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
Imagine yourself 5, 10, or even 20 years from now. What does your ideal retirement look like? What do you want to experience?
That's a good question.
And how can you start making choices today that will make those dreams a reality?
That's something to think about.
It is. It's something to ponder as we continue our journey towards financial well-being.
Yeah, it really is powerful to picture your future self and start making choices now that fit that vision. And, through this whole deep dive, we've been talking about these spending categories and tips from the article. But what's sticking with me is that feeling of, taking control. It's not about being overwhelmed by all the numbers.
Yeah.
It's about understanding them and
Yeah.
making good decisions.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. And when you know where your money's going and have strategies to manage it,
Yeah,
you can approach retirement or any stage of life really with confidence and purpose.
exactly. It's about building a life you enjoy today and in the future. And sometimes that means making tough choices like downsizing or cutting back.
Yeah.
But it's about focusing on what truly matters to you.
And it's interesting how those priorities can change as we go through life.
Oh, for sure.
What's important to us in our 20s and 30s might be totally different from what we value in our 60s and 70s. That's so true. When you're younger, you might be focused on your career, traveling, or starting a family.
Yeah.
But as you get older, those priorities might shift to spending more time with family hobbies or giving back to the community.
Right. And those changes in what's important to you naturally affect how you spend money.
They do.
That's why it's good to check in with your budget and spending every so often
Yeah.
to make sure they still match your goals and values.
Right.
It's not just a one-time thing.
Right.
It's an ongoing process of looking at things
Yeah.
and making adjustments.
It's like asking yourself, is this still working for me? Is this still making me happy? And if the answer is no,
Yeah,
maybe it's time for a change.
exactly. And those changes don't have to be huge. Even small tweaks can add up over time.
We've talked a lot about saving money in this deep dive,
We have.
but it's important to remember that retirement isn't only about financial security.
Right.
It's also about purpose and fulfillment.
Absolutely. Retirement can be a great time to explore new interests and connect with your community.
Exactly. It's about building a life that feels good, both financially and personally. And this conversation has really got me thinking about my own retirement.
Oh, yeah.
I'm picturing myself traveling to all those places I've always wanted to go,
Sounds nice.
spending quality time with my loved ones, maybe even writing that book I've always dreamed of.
Those sound like wonderful goals.
Hmm.
And by using the insights we've talked about today, you can start making that fulfilling retirement a reality.
I love that. It's all about taking those dreams and making them happen. And I think this deep dive has given everyone listening the tools and motivation to do just that.
I hope so.
We've explored those four main spending areas in retirement,
Yeah,
learned some surprising facts, and discussed practical ways to manage those expenses.
right.
And most importantly, we've encouraged you to picture your ideal retirement and start making choices today that will get you there.
Well said. Well, I think that wraps up our deep dive into the world of retirement spending.
It does. We hope you found it helpful, insightful, and maybe even a little inspiring. Remember, it's never too early or too late to start planning for a future that feels both financially secure and personally fulfilling.
Couldn't agree more.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those wallets happy.